So let's start with a meditation on this type of selflessness, which is the sort of middle one. It's not really coarse, it's not really subtle, it's kind of more in the middle. The substantially existent self, or I. So again, this is a sense of an I which appears like a boss, someone or something that is in charge and control of our body and mind. And it doesn't appear totally separate or independent, but just a little bit separate in the sense of being kind of above or superior to or in charge of the body and mind. So it seems to have that kind of role or that kind of relationship with our aggregates, our body and mind. So we're just going to see if we can get a sense of this sense of I, and then just examine it, check to see if it is something that really does exist or not. So first, make yourself comfortable, relaxed, and put aside any other thoughts that might be in your mind. For example, if you're thinking about what you're going to do when we finish here today, plans you have for tonight, tomorrow, and so on. So put those aside for now. Put all other thoughts aside for now and decide that you will do the best you can to stay focused or concentrated on this meditation. And if your mind does wander away to something else, as soon as you notice that, bring it back. Come back to the meditation. So this sense of an I, a substantially existent I, sometimes appears like the owner, the possessor of our aggregates, our body and mind. So we could use experiences where we feel like my body, there's a sense of an I that owns the body, that is the owner, the controller of the body. So we might have such an experience when we look in the mirror. We see our reflection in the mirror, and we might stand there for a few moments looking at the mirror and have thoughts about my body. You might think, oh, my body looks really good today, or it looks terrible, or my body is too thin or too fat, or my body is getting old, whatever. So try to recall having such an experience of a sense of I, which is like the owner, the possessor of the body. So if you are able to catch a glimpse of that sense of an I, like the owner or the boss, the director of the body and mind, then ask yourself if this I is something that's just named or labeled or imputed on the body and mind, or does it seem to be something existing on its own, like a substance, its own substance, having its own existence on its own, somewhere within the body and mind? In other words, does it seem to be a real thing, a real entity, a real existing thing somewhere within the body and mind? So if it does exist on its own, a real thing, a real entity existing on its own, then the more carefully we search for it, investigate it, examine it, the more clear it should become. It should become more and more clear to us. So basically, there are two places we can look to try to find this I. One is right here within our body and mind, and the other place is outside, independent of our body and mind. So let's start with the first one, because that's probably how we experience it. We probably feel that this I exists somewhere inside of us, inside of our body and mind. So go through your body in whatever way you want. You might want to just start from the top of your head and go down through your head and your torso, your arms, your legs. So just do a kind of scan of your body, looking for this I, seeing if you can find it somewhere within your body, something like a thing you can point to. You can say, there it is, right there, that is the I. And if you do have the feeling that you can find it somewhere in your body, then examine that part of the body more carefully, checking what exactly is this I. Is it some organ or bone or muscle? You can think about what the body is actually made of and try to really pinpoint, what is this I? Now, some of you might have found the eye and a part of the body, but some of you might think, no, it's not some part of the body, it's not a physical thing, it's the mind. I feel that I am my mind. So, according to Buddhism, the mind is not just one thing. It's like a stream made up of different experiences, thoughts, perceptions, seeing, hearing, smelling, and so on, memories, emotions. There's many, many different experiences, and each experience is a bit like a bubble. It arises, it lasts only a brief moment, then it disappears. The next one arises and disappears. The next one arises and disappears. So that's what we call mind. It's just a stream or a series of these bubbles of experience, arising and passing, arising and passing. And it's changing all the time. It's never the same from one moment to the next. So that's what the mind is. So if you do think the I, this I, which is like an owner, a controller, a boss, can be found in the mind, then check that idea more carefully. Which mind, which part of the mind, which experience of the mind can you point to and say, that is the I? So, some of you may have found something in the body or in the mind that you can point to and say, that is the I. But some of you may not have been able to find anything within the body and mind. So the other alternative, the other possible place to look is outside of the body and mind, separate from the body and mind. So check that idea. Can you find your eyes somewhere outside of the body and mind? You point to something outside of your body and mind and say, that is the I. And if the I did exist in that way, if it was separate from the body and mind, then it would be possible for our body and mind to be in one place and our I to be somewhere else. So our body, for example, our body and mind could be sitting here in this room, meditation factory, and our I could go out to a cafe nearby and get a cup of coffee. Is that possible? So based on what you have come to understand, come to experience during this meditation, see if you can come to some conclusion. For example, you might feel convinced that the I is not substantially existent. It's not something you can point to as existing substantially. Or you might feel unsure and want to check more, investigate more. So you can decide for yourself what you want to do as a result of doing this meditation. Is that difficult or confusing or helpful? Did anyone find this I? Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, when we look for it, we try to pinpoint this kind of an I. It's like we can't find it. But then, when things happen, like they say in the teachings or in the text, they say, in certain situations, like if somebody blames you or accuses you of something or insults you, says something nasty to you, then this feeling of I comes up really strong. Yeah? How could you talk to me like that? So that's because we're so habituated. It's such a long habit that we've had that it just, pops up like that. We have so many imprints, so much habituation to feeling that we exist in this way. And so that's why they say we have to keep checking again and again. And when we do have experiences like that, a strong feeling of an I coming up, whether it's in that kind of situation, or if we get angry, that's another situation, or frightened, frightened or excited also, wonderful thing, great thing happening, woo, then again, at those times, this feeling of an I, sense of an I becomes more apparent, more clear and vivid. So they say those are good times to try to look. So what is this I? What is that I? But usually in those situations, we're so caught up in the drama, whatever's going on, that's the last thing we think of, is looking for the I. But the next best thing is afterwards, after that situation, when you can, sit down and try to remember very clearly what happened, and then try to catch that I, and then do some analysis, some investigation of it. Did you have a question? Yeah, okay.
I was in that meditation. During that meditation, initially instructed to look for the I inside, and very quickly my mind got the idea that there is no I to be found inside. And then I went outside, and then a thought came up to my mind, and it said, the I is nowhere inside, the I is nowhere but everywhere.
This is just a thought.
And it repeats itself.
The I is nowhere but everywhere.
I'm nowhere to be found, but everywhere.
I'm everywhere.
Well, it started off by Shantideva's idea of where is the line that we draw with our mind between me and the other.
Mm.
And that line is also nowhere to be found. So where is that I? So that I is everywhere, but nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
So a little confusing for myself also.
Because, I mean, it sounds to me a little bit like this idea of a cosmic consciousness. Because I was doing some research on the idea of the non-Buddhist Hindu views of this Atman. And there's one school or one tradition called Advaita. It's a branch of Vedanta based on the Vedas. Advaita means non-dual. So they believe in an eternal, unchanging, real soul or Atman. And they say it's each one of us has our own Atman, and it's identical with Brahman, the universal soul. So there's this universal soul that's everywhere in the universe, and each one of us is part of that, but we don't know it. So we think we are separate. We think we are an individual, separate from others, separate from this universal soul, and this is our ignorance. This is what we have to overcome. We have to realize that there's only one soul that we all have, that we are all part of. And that's the meaning of non-duality. So, I mean, maybe, in a past life, we probably all of us, in a past life, belong to such schools and were taught such ideas, and we may still have imprints in our mind left over from those experiences, the sense of I am everywhere. That's one possible. I'm just saying, it's possible.
It's very funny, because thinking about it, the I is nowhere and everywhere felt very comfortable. And when I say it loud to you now, it feels very awkward. It's interesting for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, this is one thing that popped up in my mind. But on the other hand, I mean, they do say that, like, when we become enlightened, when the mind becomes enlightened mind, Dharmakaya, that also exists everywhere. And it's still, I mean, there's still a person. A Buddha is a person. An enlightened being is a person, a self, an I, not an inherently existing I, just a merely labeled I. And their mind has just been totally opened up, totally freed from all ignorance, confusion, delusions, obstacles, everything. So it's like totally opened up, and it's everywhere. So it could be either way.
In the meditation, it was very comfortable, and saying it, I think
Yeah, so I mean, the idea of an I being everywhere maybe isn't wrong. It depends on how you understand that I. Is that I like this permanent, unitary, independent I, the Atman, like the Hindus believe in? Or is it a merely labeled I, empty of inherent existence? So it all depends on the nature of that I, how you understand that I. Does that make sense? I don't know, I'm just blah, blah, blah.
me too.
But it's not contradictory to the Buddhist view.
Well, like I say, because when you have, when the mind is fully developed, fully freed from all the obscurations, it does exist everywhere, pervades everywhere. But it's a totally different mind than, ordinary, ignorant, sentient being mind. It's an enlightened mind. And even before that, even before enlightenment, the mind can develop amazing abilities, like psychic powers, where they say, you can see all these things happening far, far, far away. You can hear all these things going on far. So, you know, our minds are very much limited to this body and these senses that we have and so on. But even before enlightenment, one can have clairvoyance, different kinds of clairvoyance, which are just extraordinary experiences. So, I'm not saying, you know, you're right, you're wrong, whatever. This is just thoughts that pop up into my mind from what you say. Anna?
Every time I listen to the teaching of emptiness, arising in me quite similar question. Okay, last week I had a meeting, an appointment with somebody who owes me a lot of money, and I prepared myself that it is going to be a very stressful situation. And then I practiced in the morning and did my practice, and then I decided to read the Sutra of Perfection of Wisdom and to meditate a little bit where this eye that is so tensed. And then I thought to myself, okay, there is no eye, so who is tensed? So, okay, so, and it helped. But then I say to myself, okay, but if there is no I, so who is going to the meeting? So why should I have this meeting? So who cares about the money? So there is nobody to care about the money. Well, it helped. I was sitting in the meeting. I think that they thought I'm crazy because I had this little smile of Mona Lisa. Because all the time I was thinking, there is nobody here. So, okay. And then every time I have this conversation within me, my limited understanding of the idea of, well, I understand that it doesn't say that there is no Anna. But yet, how can I use it practically? I was very confused in terms of how can I recruit it in hard times.
In what?
In hard times, like this meeting that I had. How can I practice the emptiness without going to this nihilism? And well, it was funny for me, and so it was, in that term, it was helpful that it.
But it does. I mean, it doesn't sound like you went into nihilism, because you did go to the meeting and you sat there and, you know, participated in the meeting. I think if you go into nihilism, you would think, I don't exist at all. There's no I at all who can go to a meeting and talk. You know, you would just totally lose any sense of self at all. So the fact that you didn't do that, and you did get yourself to the meeting and you were participating in the meeting, so you did still have some sense of self or I. And I mean, to me it does sound like that was a helpful thing for you, because if you hadn't done those practices and meditations, you would have maybe gone very tense, and maybe you would have gotten very angry or whatever, you know. So doing this kind of reflection, or just checking, you know, who is this I, what is this I, really does help the mind to cool down and not be so grasping at the I. And so that does help us to take things in a more flexible way, in a more relaxed way, not so caught up in I and tense and emotional and so on. So it does help. And I mean, you know, we do exist conventionally. This is, actually, I didn't get around to talking about the two truths, but the two truths are conventional truth and ultimate truth. And according to Madhyamika Prasangika, ultimate truth is emptiness. Emptiness is ultimate truth. Only ultimate truth, nothing else. I'm sorry, only emptiness. So ultimate truth only includes emptiness. And everything else, which isn't emptiness, is included in conventional truth. So that includes our bodies and our minds, and also our I, the conventional I, and this room and the tankas and the tables and chairs and cushions and everything. So all of these ordinary things, these are all conventional truths, and they do exist. It's not that they don't exist. It's not that understanding emptiness just makes everything vanish and go away. These things do exist, but the understanding of emptiness changes the way you see these things, the way you experience these things. Before understanding emptiness, everything seems really solid and really like this, you know, this is a good person, this is a bad person, this is beautiful, this is ugly. So everything seems really solid and concrete. So then as you start to understand emptiness, things get a little less solid and a little more illusory. And eventually, when you fully understand emptiness, you see things as like an illusion. I mean, I'm not talking from experience, but I was just listening to some teachings of the Dalai Lama, and he was talking about how, you know, over the years, you know, he's been doing a lot of study and meditation on emptiness, and now he's just completely convinced that everything's an illusion. So, but he's still sitting there teaching, you know, laughing and smiling and teaching and eating and drinking and making jokes and talking to the people, you know. So it's not like he just stopped existing because he realized emptiness. But, I mean, I think this is probably where his joy comes from, his incredible joy and compassion and love, which is just out there for everybody. So, I mean, that's all the conventional side of things. So when you really understand emptiness, it doesn't wipe out conventional existence. They say the real understanding of emptiness, correct understanding of emptiness, you're able to understand both. Conventional truth, ultimate truth. They exist side by side. They don't wipe each other out or contradict each other. They're like two sides of a coin or two sides of a hand, you know? So, and that is important because you know, people do sometimes think emptiness means nothing at all. So it is important to understand there are two levels of truth. Not only emptiness, but there's also conventional truth, conventional existence. And so, I mean, we do exist, and we have to take care of ourselves, we have to take care of our bodies, we have to take care of our people, family. And if we're following the spiritual path, we have to do that. We have to do our practices and work our way to enlightenment. So all of those things exist. They're true, they're valid. And we don't want to forget those or wipe those out or lose touch with those. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I've come to a conclusion after this meditation that there is an I, but it is a current I that the mind works with in the constellation, the current constellation.
Current, present.
The present constellation of my body, mind, and I, which is a feeling, that's what my mind works with. I can die tomorrow or in a few minutes or develop into something else. But currently there is an I that the mind works with in order to get more wisdom, to be able to change, to develop, and so on. So I don't know if we can call it an I. It is conventional, yeah? It is the present thing, but it's something for the mind to work with. Otherwise, I could not be able to develop my mind into something and get it, you know, into a better place and become enlightened eventually. It's a tool. So it does exist now, side by side with the mind, and it's something that changes. Like the mind is the boss, yeah? It's the energy, it will continue, but it uses this I thing.
But your mind cannot be the boss. If you listen to your mind, you're totally lost.
It's not a question of listening to your mind. It's what your mind does. It's not by giving you orders, but it is there. It is evolving, developing, You know, when you practice, it changes, and this I helps it change. Using this I helps it change. That's what I see. I don't know. I don't know if I can call it I, but it's something, you know, that is currently here with me. Not in the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we can actually have many different ideas about I, and at different times, you know, at different times. So it kind of depends on what's happening in each moment with our body, with our mind, with our life, things around us, and so on. So sometimes the I can be very calm and peaceful, very rational, very clear. Sometimes the I is like completely crazy and out of control. And I mean, the I, again, the existing I, the I that does exist, is just label. It's just what we label to body and mind, or one part of the body or one part of the mind. So it can take different forms, different shapes at different times. Yeah. So in a way it's not too difficult to understand that intellectually. But the problem is we have this very instinctive feeling that there's more than that. You know, there's a real I that comes up when we are threatened or accused or insulted, or we don't get our way, or whatever, you know, different circumstances. That is the I that we're trying to look for and identify. And then ask ourselves, does that really exist the way it appears? Is it real or not? I like to use the analogy of a mirage. You know, that's a really helpful one, especially here, because you do see mirages when you go out in the desert. And, you know, you could swear there's water over there. You know, it looks so real. Lake or river, ocean, whatever. It's really over there. Water. There's water over there. And if you're not familiar with the area, you might really think there is water. But, you know, if you know this area, you know there is no lake there, or your friend tells you, look, I've lived here for 30 years, there's no water over there. It's just a mirage. You know, but still it looks like water. Even if you say to yourself, it's not water, it's just a mirage, but still to your mind, to your eyes, more, it's the visual appearance, really looks like water. So it's kind of similar. But then the thing is, you know, if you're not convinced and you really want to find out, is it water or not, you go and check it out. You walk in that direction or drive your car in that direction, try to get closer and closer, and what will happen is it'll disappear. You won't find any water. And then you're convinced, then it's for sure, you know, there's no water. So it's kind of similar, you know, we have this appearance of an I, that it seems to exist as a real thing on its own, especially when we get emotional. You know, we could swear there's an I in there that's upset or angry or frightened or excited or whatever, you know. It seems so real. But if it did exist, huh?
It's not the I, it's the emotion.
Well, yeah, it is emotion. Emotion exists, but there's a sense of an I that is emotional, behind the emotion, underneath the emotion, somewhere experiencing the emotion. That is the thing we're looking for. The emotion exists, yes. Emotion is an aspect of the mind, but the sense of an I that is experiencing that emotion, that is angry or upset or frightened or whatever, that's the thing we're trying to investigate. It seems like it's really there, but is it? Is it really there? And we have to do this again and again, because even if we do it one time and we can't find the I, but the next day, there it is again, you know, it comes back again. So it's like a long process to investigate and get to the point where we are completely convinced it's not real, it doesn't really exist.
It's
that I is there and it does experience all that, but it's changing. So it's not that it does not exist, it's just changing all the time.
So there is a conventionally existing I, an I that does exist, and that is just what we label. Okay, so I can say, right now I'm feeling happy. Okay, I am happy, I am happy. But what's really going on there is there's just a feeling of happiness in my mind, and I'm labeling that I. I'm just saying I am happy, but there is no I who is happy. That's how it seems, right? It seems, okay, there's happiness, but then there's this extra thing, an I that is happy. Something other than the happiness. You know what I'm saying? That's how it seems. There's just happiness, but no I that's happy. But we can say, I mean, just in our, you know, communication with each other, it would be really weird to just say, happy. You know, people wouldn't want to practice. So it's just, you know, to communicate, we say, I am happy. And somebody who understands emptiness, somebody who's realized emptiness, would understand that I doesn't really exist. It's just labeled. It's just a label. But someone who hasn't realized emptiness, who still hasn't, you know, figured it out, feels there's a real I that is happy. Something other than the happiness. Something that's experiencing the happiness. But in fact, it isn't there.
And the same is with the mind. The mind doesn't really exist.
No, the mind does exist. Yeah. Mind, our body and our mind exist. They do exist. Although not the way we see them, because we also see our body and mind as existing inherently, independently from their own side. So we have to investigate that.
Why the mind exists and the I doesn't?
Huh?
Why does the mind exist and the I doesn't?
Why does the mind exist and the I doesn't?
Sorry,
Isn't
but
it?
I
They
don't
both do not
understand,
exist.
because you said that there is a merely labeled I, so there is a merely labeled I existent. It's a very subtle I that exists. That's what I understood.
But not the way we think. I mean, to really understand what it means, merely labeled I, to really understand what that means, one has to first understand emptiness. Without understanding emptiness, we can say, oh, merely labeled I, but we still believe it's not merely labeled, it's inherently existing I. So we have to first realize emptiness, get the inherently existing I out of the way, and then we can understand what it means to be merely labeled. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, it's like it's almost not there. It's almost non-existent. We have this expression, barely there. It's barely there. It's almost not there. So it's very, very, very fine and subtle. But it's not easy to understand that. You know, as soon as we think I exist, then it's immediately the inherently existing I, not a merely labeled I. So, anyway.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You know, my head is going everywhere, like, oh my God.
But you're the only one, by the way, because the rest, we understood.
So my eye, please, so my eye is exploding. Okay, like, so what I'm getting, yes, is like, we are like a machinery, yes? Something happens outside, I get angry, or my emotions, you know, started to like,
Yeah.
exactly, and automatically it's about me, about my I. I cannot change my feelings, for example, at that precise moment, because if I love, I love. If I hate, I hate, and I can't change you know, in that precise moment, my feelings. But the concept of I, and for me the value of that conversation is that I can get that the I, it's about me, it's a survival like machinery, yes? It's something I invented, it's something that it's made up, and from many past lives. So I can do something with that, like it's not about me, it's not that I, and if it's something that I invented and it's not real, so I can invent something more powerful for me. You get that?
That's the next module.
That's for more than 15.
No, but if you say this for someone who's really suffering, you invented it. Maybe like 2 slaps. Like,
Sorry?
if you say this to someone who's really suffering,
Yeah.
this is all empty, this is all, then he will just...
No. I mean, we talked about this a little bit at the end of the last session, last time we met, about the importance of having a healthy sense of self when engaging in this kind of discussion about emptiness. I mean, if a person is really suffering, especially mental suffering, I think somebody mentioned one day, mental suffering is worse than physical suffering. So if someone is really deeply caught up in mental suffering, I wouldn't talk about emptiness to this person. I mean, you have to heal them. You have to help them first, you know, get healed, get in a healthier state of mind. So, I mean, I'm not a therapist. I might send this person to a therapist if they really need that. But I think, you know, to engage in listening, thinking about meditating on emptiness, one's mind needs to be pretty strong and pretty stable.
Yeah.
Not shaky, not fragmented, not mentally disturbed. But I mean, if someone already knows about emptiness, if someone has already heard about emptiness, and then some mental suffering comes up, then they might be able to use their understanding of emptiness to manage or to deal with the mental suffering, and it could be helpful. But it's not necessarily the most, you know, going to be helpful for everybody. It really depends on the person. I don't know if that's answering your question or not.
I wasn't talking about unstable people. I was talking about people who has a stable sense of self, who has like daily sufferings. That I cannot see how you can use emptiness with compassion sometimes, because compassion says, I worry, I'm worried about you, and there's I and there's you, so where's the emptiness here?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the emptiness is where the I and the you like combines together. I don't know, it's just...
Well,
you just said there is conventional truth. There is a conventional existence. It's not just emptiness.
Yeah, it's the middle way. It's not entirely existing and not entirely not existing.
I mean, the ways you can use emptiness in this situation where there's mental suffering would be to investigate, like Anna was saying, the I that is feeling tense. What is this I? Can I find it? Is there something I can point to in the body that's the I? I mean, tension is there, yes, there is tension, there is feeling of stress, tension, worry, and so on. But there's a sense of an I who is worried, an I who is stressed, an I who is frightened, whatever, you know. That, what is that? Look for that, investigate that. Is that something real? And I mean, it may not work for everybody, but it could work in the sense of, like, if you can't really find this I, it takes a lot of the tightness, the heaviness away from the stress. There might still be stress. I mean, you're probably still feeling some stress, but much less than before you did this, yeah? Yeah, and I mean, I don't always use this method, but when I do, I also find it helpful when you just try to turn your attention inward and what is this I who is thinking this way or feeling this way? Well, what is this, you know? So just doing that within a couple of minutes.
You are separating your feelings from that I.
Yeah.
Because that I become not the feeling. As you said, Anna, in your video, about being afraid. You are not being afraid. You are afraid, but it's not that you. So that you become something free, that you can do something else with that I. Not because it's real, because you are inventing something that is empowering you at that time. That's what I'm saying.
So it sounds like what you were saying is the idea of the conventionally existing I, the existing I, is something we can utilize in constructive ways. And this is exactly what we do in the path. You know, we're not saying there's no I at all. There is an I that exists, and right now we're in this body, we're doing this life. You can use it to help people. You can also use it to meditate and, you know, move along the path and attain these realizations and eventually enlightenment and be able to help others. So this is the conventional I. There is an I, conventionally existing, merely labeled I, that exists in that way and eventually can become enlightened and do amazing things.
Because there is emptiness.
Yeah, all of this.
No emptiness, no way out of samsara. So simple.
Yeah.
If there is no emptiness, we are stuck here forever and ever.
Well, you're jumping ahead a little bit. No, I mean, that'll come next time. That'll come next time. So next time we meet, we'll go into this third most subtle meaning of selflessness or emptiness, that of an inherently existing self, and look at that, and also dependent arising, which is one of the most helpful ways of understanding how things exist, both how things exist conventionally, how things exist ultimately, conventional truth, ultimate truth. It's really a wonderful, wonderful idea. And it's also very practical, something that can be used in a sort of practical way in our daily life. Sometimes emptiness can seem a little up there in the sky, whereas dependent arising is. And this is what the Dalai Lama said. I think I may have mentioned this last time when he met this. He says he met this Indian man who approached him and asked, is it true that there's no self? And His Holiness could see this man was like really frightened. He was shaking. And so His Holiness spoke to him about dependent arising. He said, things exist dependently. So we'll get into that next time. Understanding dependent arising helps us understand emptiness, how things don't exist inherently, independently from their own side, but also how things do exist conventionally. So it said with that one idea or reasoning, dependent arising, we take care of both truths, ultimate truth, conventional truth, and it helps us to avoid the two extremes of nihilism, total non-existence, and the other extreme is sometimes called eternalism or permanence, which in this case means believing in an inherently existing I. So it helps us to kind of clear away wrong conceptions and establish how things do exist, conventionally and ultimately. Okay, so maybe that's enough for tonight. If there's any last question? Had enough. I think we've done enough for tonight. So let's dedicate. So on page
28.
35, we'll start with the optional prayers. So first, feel a sense of joy or rejoicing in what we've done here today. It's been really positive. Even though it's difficult, we may feel like our mind is just totally crazy, messed up. But I mean, that's part of it. It's part of the process. We're thinking about things we've never thought about before, questioning things we've never questioned before. So it naturally kind of makes you feel a little crazy. But things will come more clear as time goes on. And just making this effort to try to understand emptiness, which is one of the most precious teachings the Buddha gave. It's really the key to liberation from suffering and the causes of suffering. It's the key to open the gateway to nirvana and enlightenment. So it's really, really precious. And any effort we make to try to understand it, to listen, to think about, to ask questions, to do meditation, any tiny effort we make is super powerful and positive, meritorious. It's said to purify so much negative karma and build up so much positive energy. So feel joy, rejoicing that we have spent our time in this way. It's been really beneficial and valuable. We've created a lot of merit, good energy. And we can use this energy even further. We can make even more merit, more positive energy by dedicating it, sharing it with others. Just as we started off in the beginning, having some kind of altruistic wish that what we do here today will be beneficial for others. So let's remember that and now dedicate this positive energy that it will help all living beings everywhere to find a way to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, especially ignorance, the root cause of suffering, and to achieve every kind of peace and happiness, and the causes of happiness, especially all the positive states of mind, compassion, love, kindness, generosity, wisdom. And may they have all of those positive things all the way up to enlightenment. So may this help all of us and all living beings reach enlightenment as quickly as possible. So let's read the prayers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with a dedication praised as the best by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva's deeds. Then, page 34, the long life prayer for His Holiness, in the middle of the page. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And page 33, the long life prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you. See you next time.